Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. With over 1,000 NCAA commitments, the EHL is the proven path to college. Turn it up and learn more about the college placement leader at the Division II and III levels.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto, "We take care of our own," as they help out all of those within the hockey community who've experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. What's up? My name is Neil Ravin. This is episode number 83 of the E-Show, and on this week's episode, we feature another one of the youngest franchises in the league, in the Seacoast Spartans. Brett Tryder is busy gearing up for his third season at the helm in Exeter, New Hampshire, and the veteran head coach feels good about the way his program has developed over the first 2 years, and he continues to have his main goal focused on reaching the EHL Frozen Finals. The E-Crew finishes things off with an all-time lineup for the Spartans that features a strong core of players who advanced onto the University of Southern Maine. I'm joined now by Brett Tryder, the head coach and general manager for the Seacoast Spartans. How's it going, Brett?
Doing great, Neil. How about you?
Doing great. Welcome back onto the E-Show. Let's jump right into it. Heading into your third season now, when you backtrack and you look back, the first year you were heading into an inaugural year for the Spartans. Last year you were heading into what was a pandemic season. This year feels normal. Does it feel normal for you?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Neil. Normal. It was anything but the last 2 years. But yeah, no, I feel like we've kind of established a culture, and we're ready to go in year three.
And I asked that same question last week with Worcester because they came into the league the same year you guys did at Seacoast. The difference between Worcester and yourself is you had previous coaching experience in the EHL. How much did you feel like over the past couple of years you look back on that time spent with the Wolves?
I think you learn everything. Everywhere you go, you learn a little bit, you know. Even when I was at Plymouth State, I spent a lot of time with these teams recruiting players in this league. So I know the league pretty well. It's just about learning. It changes a little bit year to year with recruiting and nailing your recruiting plan. And, the lay of the land changes a little bit every year, no matter what league you're in, I think. But no, I think we feel like we're grounded now, ready to roll for year three.
What differences, if any, do you really see from the time with the Wolves to your time now with the Spartans and the overall level of play in the EHL?
I think the league gets better with more hockey. I mean, it's relatively probably the same. And I say that meaning that that's what the college coaches love about it, right? A kid that might have gotten 40 points in our league 10 years ago will do the same thing in college as a kid who gets 40 points in our league, last year and comes out. So I think the consistency of the league, has been great. And it gets better relative to how hockey gets better in general.
And when you look back on your first 2 years with Seacoast here, year one in 46 games, you had a record of 17, 28, and 1. Year two in not as many games, obviously, because of the way last year played out. You had a record of 16, 19, and 3. So if it's a full year, you probably surpass that 17 mark from the previous season. What differences did you see in your Seacoast Spartans team from year one to year two?
Honestly, I didn't see a ton of difference. We both years we were looking for that one guy that could score on the power play or really get a big goal. The years are a little bit different. We lost Tryder in January that first year, which was our number one goalie, and I think we kind of hit a lull there. Second year, we had 3 of our top 4 defensemen out for a stretch, and we had a losing streak in there. So the years really feel eerily similar to me, Neil, and just a struggle to get those the big goals or catch up a lead. Both years our power play numbers were dismal, and I feel like both years if we had that one guy, or certainly if we had 2 guys that could natural goal scorers. I think those records could have been reversed easily.
So maybe this question, or the answer to this question, is easy. But as you approach this offseason, is that something, your power play numbers, is that something that's on the top of your list to address?
100%. The power play is so crucial. When you have a good power play, I know the year before I came here, we had a 30% power play in the team I had, and you never felt like you were out of a game. You always feel like you're a tripping penalty away from tying a game or winning a game. The confidence on the bench is good. When you're not scoring, it's stressful to let up a goal. If you're not sure if you're going to get it back, or you look down your bench and you're not sure, you can't count on that one guy or two that is going to score. So that was definitely a focus this year. Power play, and just guys that don't look the part, but can put up some numbers. We're taking a chance on a few of those guys this year.
And I got to go 4 for 4 with this question. I know the answer that you're going to give, and I've gone 3 for 3 so far with your division opponents from last year, which of course were the Avalanche, Wolves, and Lumberjacks. Was the North Division the toughest division in the league?
Yes. Let's say
4 for 4.
Let's say that. The league's tough from top to bottom. Neil, you know that, and there were some teams that really picked up steam, and that Worcester being one. We watched a lot of video on these teams, and there weren't many teams in the league I think you'd want to play. It's tough from top to bottom, but certainly the Wolves are one of the hardest teams to play against I think I've ever coached against, with how sneaky they were and how they used time and space. Vermont really came on strong once they got dialed in, and obviously, everybody's chasing the Avs, man. Everybody in the league's chasing the Avs. It's they've set the mark, and Chris does a great job down there, and everybody's everybody's trying to do what they do.
But you knocked them off in the playoffs. When that overtime winner went in Game 2, what was the immediate reaction that you had?
Yeah, my immediate reaction was on to the next series. Really, it's kind of the way coaches roll. I think it's nice to knock the Avs off. I kind of had a feeling they were going to get in with the at-large anyway, so there wasn't much to celebrate. It was good. The Avs are the Avs, right? It's nice to knock them off, or spend 5 days thinking you might have knocked them off.
Yeah, right. And then looking back on the year that it was, and having those same 3 opponents all year long, I'm sure it did. But did it ever get old?
Honestly, no, Neil.
Okay.
What a crazy answer, right? But I mean, I was coaching against the Avs, who you love to play. I was coaching against the Wolves, who I used to coach, and Vermont's always a fun team to put a game plan together for. So it was kind of exciting. It was a different kind of challenge. I'm not going to lie, I kind of enjoyed it.
Okay. And were there any? I know all 3 teams kind of play different styles of play, but were there any similarities between the 3 teams that you noticed?
Yes, I think a little bit of similarity with the Wolves and Vermont when they first came back. Then Vermont changed their style a little bit against us. There was a little bit of chess going on, or checkers. I don't want to give us too much credit. Checkers probably. But the Avs do what they do. They play a college style game, and they support the puck well. The Wolves were almost the opposite of the Avs, where they're really sneaky away from the puck. It's more of almost a European style, I guess, which makes sense with their high-end Euros last year. In Vermont, you really never know. You think we had them for a few games because they stuck with a plan and they changed it up a little bit. So it was really some pretty cool back and forth with those guys. But the teams were very, very different. Vermont and the Wolves a little bit alike at the beginning, with them springing their forwards out of the D zone and that kind of stuff. But not at all, not too similar, really.
Okay, so it didn't get old for you, but did your players ever approach you and say, "Coach, can we play somebody else?"
You know what, Neil? I'm not sure what the answer is supposed to be here, but our guys loved it. Our guys loved
Okay.
it. You know, you'd lose a couple and you'd want to come back and beat them so badly, and then you'd beat them and they'd want to come back and beat you. So it was the games were pretty clean. I think a couple of rough ones early in the season, but I think we got rid of some of the riffraff, and then one or two got away a little bit, but nothing like you'd think it would be playing. I'm not even sure. Would we end up playing them 8 or 9 times, 8 times?
I think it was even more than that.
yeah, including playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. So it was a ton, but you know what? It was a different kind of challenge, and with the guys coming into our league from prep schools and from the North American League, I think the rosters changed just enough to give us a new perspective on the team and a new goal. So it was an interesting kind of year. I enjoyed it.
Okay, fair enough. And let's talk about some of the players that made up your roster last year, because it was such a unique season. And you made a few acquisitions during the year that helped make your team even better. One that stood out, quite literally, was Clendenon Stewart, obviously with the size that he presented. What did his presence add to your lineup?
I think Glenn looks like an NHLer sometimes. The kid was, when he turned it on, he was a man amongst boys. He was that guy that would score those goals that I was talking about that we weren't getting earlier. He would score them not completely on a consistent basis, but consistent enough to win us some games for sure.
And of course, for those that don't know, Clendenon Stewart was 6'7". That's why I say literally he stood out. But leading your team on the back end, you brought back a D in Bjorn Schutbach, who wore the C for you. When you had the chance to bring back a returner like that to lead your defensive core and lead your locker room, what did that mean to you?
Yeah, Shoop's one of those phenomenal kids. Somebody you're proud to have representing you, works hard all the time. He was one of the 3 that went down with an injury when we went on that little skid there. But, you can't have enough guys like Bjorn Schutbach around. He's just a great kid, great human. He's off to College. It was nice, really, really nice to get him back.
Was that I mean, you're proud of every commitment, but was that commitment a little extra special as a 2-year guy and going through the injury that he did this past year? Yeah,
it's always nice to send a kid to the NESCAC. Obviously good things for guys that go to the NESCAC. And to compare commitments is a tricky thing because, you get one guy that you're proud of going to the NESCAC, but you knew he was probably going to rule the world someday.
Yes.
A lot of these guys that might not have gotten the chance to go to school if it weren't for hockey,
yep.
Those mean as much. So I think, although a guy like Schutbach is destined for great things, I think he would have been with or without me in his life. And definitely looking forward to seeing him play at Con, though.
So let's touch on one more player, because I thought it was unique the way things played out last year with this player. And that's Jacob Wetman in goal. And I say unique because as the second half was progressing, you fielded a lot of calls about teams that were trying to move a goalie your way. You only had 2 goalies at the time. I remember a call to me specifically, though, you made and said, if anybody asks, Wetman's our guy. And that's it moving forward. What did you see in him? And obviously you proved to be right in the long run.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing, right? With goalies here, you could have 2 guys that have a 90 save percentage, but if you had one guy, he'd play more consistently and maybe be a 92, right? So I've learned that the hard way a couple times in my coaching career, that if you try to keep 3 goalies happy, you're going to keep no goalies happy, right? So, halfway through the season, we lost Rhett, and I just figured it was kind of my time to commit to that and say, you know what, that is the right way. You gotta, there's no reason to mix this up again. We have 2 goalies. Drew Adams is a heck of a goalie. He was he's an 18-year-old last year, but we're psyched to get him back. So I just didn't really feel like clouding it up anymore. I think there's a danger in that in net and a danger up front, really, to add guys that the same as what you have already. So, Webb battled when he was aggressive, he was unbelievable. and really, it was just not about clouding it up. It was about trying to get that guy, some more games to see if he could really be special. And he ended up being very good.
He was tremendous down the stretch, ultimately led to a commitment to Lake Forest College. You bring up aggressive, though, and there were a few times when I was calling games when he was in net where it was almost like Tim Thomas, where he was so far out of the crease that I would imagine as a coach, did you ever feel like you were pulling your hair out, or did you just trust that that's his style? He knew what he was doing.
I knew when he was being crazy, he was going to have a good game. Okay. I got more nervous when he wasn't doing crazy things, because that means he wasn't being as aggressive. Now you got to let a guy like that go, right? As a coach, I probably would have pulled Tim Thomas, and we never would have won the Stanley Cup. So, there's signs like that when you have an aggressive goalie. The first puck dump or the first rim that the other team throws in, you kind of have an idea how he attacks that puck and whether he's there to go. And the more games he got, the more he was that way. Of course, you get a little nervous, but I would have been more nervous if he wasn't doing that.
Yeah. So now looking forward as you enter your third season and look back on what you've done in the playoffs the first 2 years. You had a win over the Walpole Express in the playoffs your first year, then got knocked out by the Vermont Lumberjacks. We covered your series sweep over the Avalanche this past year, then got knocked out by Vermont. In those 2 Vermont series, there were some 1-goal games. Where do you set the bar for yourselves this year? Is it to get past that next round, or is it still, we want to make it to the Frozen Finals?
Frozen Finals. We want to get to the Frozen Finals. It was within grasp. We could taste it this year. That Vermont series, we were up 3-0 in that first game, and they scored a goal, and kind of the air got let out of the balloon. But I think it would be silly to strive for anything but that. You know who you have to beat, so by having a goal less than that, you're admitting that the teams are gonna beat you. So we know what we have to do to get there, and silly to have a goal less than that, I think.
Fair enough. And when you look forward to this year and the normalcy that, knock on wood, I was saying we hope to have earlier, and playing on the different opponents that you get to play again that are around you out of the state of New Hampshire, is there still a part of you in the back of your mind that, having been knocked out by Vermont 2 years in a row, you wouldn't mind getting matched up with them in the playoffs to get some revenge this year?
I'd like to play Vermont 46 times this year. I don't even mind the trip. Burlington's nice this time of year. No, of course, right? When I heard Mosso left for UNE, I was devastated. We owe them big time. But everybody's a rival, right? In this league, it's like the coaches, mostly good buddies, and there's that healthy rivalry with just about every team in our league. You remember one game that you could have won that you did, and one game that you came back and beat them. One game that went to a shootout, whatever it might be. So healthy rivalries all around. Can't wait to get it started. Got to get off to a good start here. We're doing camp at J Peak, Vermont, for 3 weeks this year before the season. So
awesome.
Yeah, we're pretty pumped about that. We rented up there. They're going to feed us and do all that stuff, and we're really trying to get off to a better start, get the systems going, and jump out of the gate here.
So is there an exhibition game I should put on the schedule then between you and the Lumberjacks?
That's what I'm hoping for. Yeah. Yep. That's what I'm hoping for. Send the EMTs.
Yeah. Okay. Then we'll count that as 47, right?
No, actually, I put that out there. So hopefully we can swing down. They're coming in a little bit later, but hopefully we can squeeze a game in there. Maybe even travel down and grab one with the Avs or Wolves too. So
sweet. And now looking at your roster for this upcoming season, obviously with every junior team, there's turnover, but for you guys, you've had well over 15 commits in your first 2 years. When you have to bring in a full new roster and replace different pieces, do you try and identify players that you want to almost replicate, or what's the strategy as you look forward?
That's a good point. But as I said, we're kind of looking for scorers here. I went, we did a little more recruiting during the season this year than we have in the past. That seems to be the smart move. Looking for things to fill spots, but I don't necessarily want to replicate, teams that haven't won the whole thing. Right? When you win the whole thing, you want to replace those pieces one for one. Apples for apples. But I just want to put the best team together I can. I want a bunch of guys that want to work hard, that want to make the guy next to them better. Mm-hmm. Getting those guys from programs that you trust. I think now that I've been in the league a few years, we're starting to go to guys we trust to send us players, knowing that they're coachable, right, and that they're team guys, and that they want to win. So, I think each year that's going to get better. Now, I don't know how much better the other teams are going to get, but I think that we're going to be better.
Awesome. Well, before I bring in Jeff Mills and we put together the Spartans all-time lineup from your first 2 years, there is one player that we're going to include in that lineup, I'm sure. And you're going to include in your lineup this year. You're bringing them back to bring a piece like Michael O'Brien back. What does that mean to you as a coach?
Always another great guy. Same mold as Shupak, just he's a local guy. He helps out with all the youth stuff. He just loves to be there. He's a player coach. He's destined for college. He's already got a ton of interest in schools. Mm-hmm. Bringing back his partner Jake Emery, who they played the last probably third of the season together, and ended up possibly as our top pair last year. So, Obi knows we spent a lot of time together because he's always in the rink. He knows exactly what I would expect of him and expect of the other guys. We can't wait to get it going with Obi at the helm.
Is he wearing the C?
Absolutely.
Okay, that was a quick answer.
Well,
yep. I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and you have a 3-week training camp come up, so I hope that you would get a chance to enjoy the rest of the off season and then have fun up at J Peak.
I appreciate it, Neil. Great talking to you.
Thanks again to Brett Tryder for coming on the podcast this week. Just like the Railers, the Seacoast Spartans heading into their 3rd season in the EHL. And I asked that same question, Jeff. Year 1, the 2 programs were going into an inaugural year, the Spartans and the Railers. Mm-hmm. Year 2, they were going into a pandemic season. Year 3, knock on wood, we're going into a normal year, right?
It should be a normal year in Exeter, as we always like to call it, aka Exeter, New Hampshire. We're the home of the Seacoast Spartans. We love that place. And what is it? January we'll be up there for the showcase again?
Martin Luther King weekend. We always go up there. And that showcase this season actually also includes an EHLP All-Star game.
Oh,
yes. We've been trying to do that for multiple years now. And finally, I should knock on wood again. Finally, we get to pull it off this year.
Can't believe we started texting that back and forth this week. It was like, I'm getting the jitters, Neil, but we won't cross that bridge yet.
So that will be on the first night of that showcase. That's January 15th. So it'll be good to get back up there. They hosted a great showcase back in January of 2020, which feels like a half decade ago.
Forever. Forever.
So we'll start building this lineup with the last name that Brett and I talked about during the interview, and that's Michael O'Brien, who I talked about in this podcast last year a little bit. Not a defenseman that goes out there and puts up a boatload of points, but just steady. Always in the right position. Only, not many guys returning for the Spartans this year because of their commitments. And as Brett answered there at the end of his interview, without a doubt, he'll be wearing the C this year.
Excellent.
Already locked in. We know who the captain is going to be. So overall, he's played in 34 games so far for the Spartans. As I mentioned, not really a big point guy, 3 goals and 5 assists throughout that time, but just always in the right position. So we're going to start the defensive core with Michael O'Brien, which I think the next D is quite obvious where you're going to go with this one.
Is it a man I had for fantasy? Quite an interesting name. Not the easiest to
Yes.
say, but me and you got it because we're broadcasters. Ready, set. 1, 2, 3. Bjorn Schupbach.
Yes.
Hey, there we
Yes. As Tryder once told me when he first got into the league, it rhymes with Tupac.
go. That's right. I forgot he said that. Perfect. We all know Tupac. He may or may not still be alive, folks. I don't know. Go out in California and check it out. But Bjorn Schupbach is definitely alive and well. He was a stalwart on my blue line for defense, fantasy defenseman. Puts a lot of pucks in the back of the net and has a great name.
As a defenseman, right?
As a defenseman.
19 goals.
Yeah.
In 2 years. He's the leading scorer in Spartan. I mean, we're going through this again. Just like the Railers, they only have 2 years to go off of. But he's the leading scorer in Spartans history.
Wow.
So
over a couple of forwards that we'll mention later, definitely in the top forwards, and there's some good forwards there too. So I mean, that's a big credit to Schupbach for being able to be as much of a lethal offensive threat as he has been in the last couple of years. And him and Mike O'Brien, that's a good way to start off the Spartans back end there.
And we're clearly starting with the D, so let's stick with the D. Nick Nault was part of the All-Star, though. I've brought this up so many times. The last All-Star team that we had that faced the college teams, which was in the 2019-20 season, so that would be October of 2019. Nault was a captain for the Spartans that inaugural year, played for that All-Star team that faced Pittsburgh State, Salem State, and UMass Boston. He actually spent the 2018-19 season with the Apple Corps, then moved up to Seacoast because what was funny how it worked out, he played 18U AAA hockey for Seacoast, but they didn't have a junior program during the 18-19 year, but they did during the 19-20 year. So he came to the EHL, and then he was like, oh, they have a junior team now. I'm going to go back to New Hampshire. He's from Goffstown. So it worked out great for him. And he's at the University of Southern Maine now. I think we'll have one of his teammates here when we get to the forwards. But Nault gives us quickly 3D.
3D. Stacking them up. I knew this was going to be fun with the Spartans because they have a lot of good defensemen in their short time. So let's see. What should we go with next? Daniel Long?
Well, I think
we'll start doing like we do every week. We'll throw out some names and bring it up for discussion. And
I don't know. We put Dan Long on the Railers last week, so I don't know if we could put Dan Long on the Spartans.
Oh, that's right. We did. I'd say we have a couple like Reese Poulin was a main Eclipse and then played for the Spartans.
Well, and the Long story was so interesting because if last year doesn't play out the way that it did, he would never have played for the Railers.
Right.
Yeah, because he went to Westfield State halfway through the 1920 season and played 14 games in college hockey, then came back to the EHL because Westfield State wasn't playing, just like Nault. Spent the 18-19 year with the Apple Corps, went to play in the 19-20 year with the Spartans, had 20 points in 27 games, which is why Westfield State was like, we'll take him now, right? Halfway through the season. And maybe, you know what? We do this every week, Jeff. Maybe he's the utility.
That's the utility. Bigger kid than I remember, too, Dan Long. 6 feet, 201 pounds.
Yeah, he was 21. On.
Yeah, so he's a big kid, and that's always interesting, too, when you see the hopping back and forth. And obviously, everyone knows last year, it was quite the interesting year with, colleges freezing games, canceling the season back on, season back off. But the silver lining out of it is we had a lot of guys like Dan Long that were able to come back into the league and play for the EHL last year. And I forgot we put him on the Railers team. That's the thing with all these guys moving around. It's hard for us to keep track of who's where and who's going where next.
I want to go with Andrew Clouden next. And he was a defenseman for the Spartans last year. 8 points throughout the year, but another guy that was just steady, and another player that, because of the nature of the season, ended up in the EHL. He was in the OJHL the season prior. That would be a funny team to look at. This is the Buffalo Junior Sabres OJHL team in 1920, right? there's a number of players that came to the EHL last year because they couldn't go back to that, right? Like I just mentioned Andrew Clouden. Jeremy Schwartz played D for the Lumberjacks last year. There was a name, I think Andrew Clifford played for in here somewhere. I think it was the year prior. Mm-hmm. There was another player in Josh Higgins who played for the Avalanche. So interesting how things work out. But Andrew Clouden came for just a single season to the EHL this past year, heading off to SUNY Cortland this fall. So I'm going to put him down as the 4th D.
And Andrew Clown better keep that phone available, Neil. I mean, the big Buffalo Sabres might be calling some of those former junior Sabres to come back and take the ice there up in Buffalo. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, seriously, right? That team
keep your phone ready.
That team is struggling.
So that's what happens. You might call the Buffalo Junior Sabres and come on, boys, come on up. Keep that cap low.
Nick Labrizzi is another defenseman heading off to USM, and he put up a few more points during his time with the Spartans, 16 points in 46 games. Actually began his EHL career with Team Maryland, and then moved over to the Spartans for the stretch run during the 2019-20 season. I think him and Null are very similar, where they can contribute offensively, but also get right up in your face and bug you at the same time. So I think we'll go Labrizzi next, which gives us a little bit of a North Carolina feel from Raleigh. Right?
Hey, Raleigh. Shout out to Lauren Smith.
Yes.
And the Hurricanes, who you guys will hear very soon. One of our newest members of the E-Crew.
2019 to 21 for Labrizzi.
And we only have one D left. Wow.
Yes. Well, there's only 6, right? We always wow ourselves every week when we go through the D, but there's only 6.
It's half the size of the forward list.
The name that I had circled here next is Louis Valente.
Valente, good pick.
He played the 2019-20 season, and I guess you could say he did come back this past year also, because Worcester State hadn't got anything started yet. I'm not really sure how things played out this past year. Played in 3 games and then never appeared again. I think he may have been one of the defensemen that Tryder was referring to got hurt. I mean, that was what was crazy about this past year's Spartans team is at one point they were down to like 2 or 3 like healthy defensemen, and that was it. Yeah. But they were still right there with everybody in that North Division, which when you get a chance to listen to the interview, Jeff, we went 4 for 4 with the question of the summer. What division was the toughest?
The North.
All 4 teams in the North said it was the North.
They're trying to make their dear friend and pal Neil Ravin look even better than he already does on a Wednesday morning in August.
Will the North be the toughest division this year? I don't know.
Oh, we're going back to the different divisions and whatnot too, so it's a little.
Well, no, we're keeping 4 divisions, right? But we're going back to a different schedule, right? So it's not.
So we'll be able to. So I guess it's the same division, but because you'll be able to play the out-of-state teams, it's a little different, right? Because you're not playing the same teams over and over and over again.
Now, do we get
again? Knock on wood.
Yes. Do we get to the playoffs and the North Division is the only division that features games or series that get to Game 3, and that proves the point again? Maybe. Maybe.
If the rest of them are sweeps, then yeah, I'd say that makes your point.
Yes. I mean, we're a long ways from the playoffs.
Yeah, we're a long ways away. Long ways away.
So we're at the forwards now. Let's start with Nick Nault's teammate that I was referring to before, and that is Shea Flanagan. And I didn't get the chance to even talk to Brett about Flanagan because his story kind of is unique. Actually, Flanagan came on the podcast. I forgot about that. When the Spartans first came on the podcast, Flanagan was on with Brett and Kurt. So Shea Flanagan was a captain alongside Nick Nault during the 2019-20 season, and actually played for Tryder back when Tryder coached the Wolves. Then went with Tryder to the Connecticut Nighthawks in the USPHL. then came back with Tryder to the Seacoast Spartans in the EHL. So a lifelong Brett Tryder forward. Right?
Big Brett Tryder guy, Shea Flanagan. Aren't we all?
Well, I mean, you see it with a lot of guys. They trust their coach. Look at all the players that have followed Josh Fusco from Wilkes-Barre down to Team Maryland, right?
Good point. Good point.
And I'm going to put Shea Flanagan for the 2019-20 Spartans, but maybe there's an asterisk here, like lifelong Brett Tryder, all-time.
Brett Tryder super fan. They played a good. That is crazy though too, that he started with the Wolves 15-16 and then went to a couple other junior leagues and then made his way back, like we said, for last year being the captain. Or sorry, that was 19-20 that he was the captain their inaugural season.
Yep. And now at USM with Nick Nault. So a good way to start our forwards off. We're gonna have a lot of USM players in here. Did I mention that before we hit record?
I just figured, being that Seacoast all the way up in Exeter, New Hampshire, close to Maine.
I mean, it's a perfect fit for them, right? So you got Flanagan so far, and Nault, and Labrizzi, and
perfect feeder system,
and then Azam Jiwa. So that's 4.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jiwa had to be the next one.
We cannot leave him off this.
No.
Jiwa was a single-year player for the Spartans this past year, but I would say he was their top forward.
Sniper. Probably their most lethal scorer. Until we get to one of my other favorite forwards that we're going to pick. And I know you probably know him. I have to throw him up there next, because he had a huge second half. But Jiwa was their most consistent forward, I think, the whole entire season.
Yes, for sure. 38 points over 42 games, 15 goals, 23 assists, and a threat every time that he was on the ice.
Yeah.
Do you want to mention that forward now? Because I did talk to Brett about him during the interview.
Is he coming back, or is he an age out, isn't he?
I believe he's.
I was going to be bold and take him like quick next year in fantasy.
I think he's going somewhere else, because he's like a multi-sport athlete. He's like.
Is he?
Yes. So we're talking about Clendenon Stewart,
aka the Tree.
The Tree, because he is 6'7", as I mentioned in the interview with Brett.
225 pounds.
He was a beast.
Only 20 years old.
I mean, look at it this way. In 13 games with the Eclipse, he had 11 points. Right when he went to Seacoast, he put up 24 points in 19 games. What I should do is pull up the game log from all the days that were just nightmares for you.
Oh my God. Because for everyone that doesn't know at home, if you have to go back and listen to the 9 million episodes that we've had since, I dropped Clendenon after the main Eclipse fizzled out and he got transferred over to the Spartans. I dropped him because I was like, he's going to move mid-season. Is it going to be a good move? And he made me pay for it.
Yes.
I think it was the first game as a Spartan. He put up like a goal and 2 assists. I was like, oh no. Might have been a power play point in there too.
But I mean, I don't have the total fantasy points that you missed. I mean, we did trim the rosters. Let's not forget that. We did trim the rosters, so it was going to be tough. But there were some games in the second half.
Oh no.
February 15th against the Wolves. A hat trick and 2 assists.
Oh, is that good?
I mean, there was this stretch of the 5th, 6th, and 7th against the Lumberjacks where he put up 2 assists, 3 assists, 2 assists. And that was right. I was probably right around the time when you had just trimmed your roster.
Yeah,
and it's like, and then you look at playoffs, right? And the series clincher against the Avalanche, he accounted or had a role in 4 of the 5 goals they scored.
A hat trick was a game winner, right? Wasn't he the one that was camped out front, tipped it in?
Yes. A hat trick and an assist in the overtime winner. I mean,
he could have been a great person to have down the stretch. No? Sorry, Clendenon, I messed it up, buddy.
Yeah. Could you have won fantasy because of it? Maybe.
I think I lost to you, Brittany, by a good 100 or so points. So, I don't know. Would have made things a little more interesting down the stretch.
I remember him being like, he was at school for like rowing or something like that before he came to the main Eclipse.
His big frame, rowing makes sense. And he's another Georgia kid, like Mason Pollard. Like we've talked about, we're starting to get these guys from the South and out West, and another Georgia guy.
Yeah,
like
I
it.
mean, the biggest thing that I say when I'm selling the EHL on the road is that there are, I think, 60 Division One programs now, and about 90 Division Two and Division Three. So you got like 150 schools where you can play college hockey, and 70% of those schools, you drop their pin, they're located inside the EHL footprint. Mm-hmm. So hockey is growing still across the country, but college hockey is still predominantly that Northeast sport, which is why we're seeing more and more kids like Stewart coming from Georgia up to New England.
Yeah.
A little bit. I'm sure the weather's a little bit different for him. He was in Maine. He was in Maine first, and then New Hampshire. But
a Georgia boy, that's like whoop. whoop. They love Clendenin.
Let's get a EHLP to EHL alum on this, even though the Spartans do not have an EHLP team. Ashton Collazo played for the Walpole Express at the EHLP level during the 2018-19 season, moved over for a very brief time with Worcester, and then keep progressing his way up the ladder to the EHL with the Spartans, and now on to Framingham State this fall. I mean, overall, when you compare the time spent between the two leagues, 44 games in the EHLP, 53 in the EHL. So almost an even split, which is the perfect, like, step one, step two, step three, and not the biggest guy by any means. Do I have his height right here in front of me? 5'7" by height.
5'7", 176.
By height. But like he played in all situations for the Spartans, especially on the penalty kill. And he's just one of those gritty guys that will, block a shot with his face if he had to, right?
Oof, yeah,
so
I love those guys. Heading
off to Framingham State this fall, and I'm sure he'll do the same thing there for the Rams when he gets to college. So we'll put him on this next, and that gives us 4 forwards so far.
And that's really good to see too, Neil, because like we've talked about with this episode or with these episodes in the off season is there's always a place in the EHL, right? Like all these coaches, they compete against each other, but in the same breath, they see guys and they know like, oh, if it doesn't work in this system, they can come work for me. And that's a great point. Collazo goes to Walpole, plays in their EHLP, and then obviously his hard work and his performance there got him noticed by Brett Tryder and Seacoast, and then he was able to find a home and move up the ladder, which you love to see that.
The biggest thing is guys would rather see a player stay in the league than go somewhere else, right? Yeah. Because ultimately, while that commitment doesn't count for maybe Walpole or the Railers, it counts for the league.
Right.
It counts for the league, which is the biggest thing that these guys sell. We've had all these Maine references so far, and we haven't even dropped my boy's name yet.
Oh,
yes, Drew Eade. I mean, this is an automatic for me. We probably should have, when I put the document together before even hitting record on the interview or on the podcast, I should have put Drew Eade's name there because Drew's my man.
Gorham Bay.
Literally my neighbor, basically, because I'm from Scarborough, the next town over. Another kid that actually spent time with the Seacoast Spartans or with the New York Apple Corps, then came to Seacoast when they had that inaugural season. So spent 2 seasons in the EHL, overall 83 games played and 37 total points. Ready to get started at Worcester State. The last name Eade, for those that don't know, is that Dave is a sports anchor in Maine. So the Eade family, love them. Like this is a lock for me.
Love it. I love that we both had our favorites with the Spartans. I had Stewart, you had Drew Eade. We both knew that. Gotta love it.
So he was on that 2019-20 team, as I mentioned. And then next, also on that 19-20 team, and then played this past season as well. I know Tryder's still trying to find a home for him. Is Jake Dubé, another player?
He was a good player.
Not the biggest guy by any means at 5'9", but he was always in the right place, right? And that's proven by the points. I mean, look no further than 85 games and 39 points, right? He was always in that right position. Some Maine ties in here as well from Old Town Maine.
Old Town Maine. Where is that, Neil? If you give us a little geography lesson.
It's further into the state.
Got it.
Maine is massive though. Like
That is.
you know what?
It's like its own country.
It really is, right? It's Old Town is up by UMaine. Have you ever been up there?
Orono? I've
Yes.
not. No.
Oh, it's a trip. Maybe I know Lauren is a UNH fan because she went to UNH and blah blah blah. Like, look, Old Town from me right now is 3.5 hours away.
Whoa, and you're in Hampstead, so
I'm in southern New Hampshire, and look how far into Maine Old Town is. There's still all this space to go. Like it.
Yeah, Portland isn't even like halfway to Old Town, Maine.
Right.
Jeez.
So for those that ever want to go catch, like, if they want to get a real like the best college hockey experience, like you have to just see Alphon, UMaine, which Orono and Old Town are right next to each other. Like, it's a trip, right? You're gonna get on 95 North and your GPS is gonna say continue along this route for 100 and something miles, and you're gonna be like, why is there just 2 lanes and trees? And it's just what it is. But when you get up there, the atmosphere is something else, man. And I'm sure Dubé has gone to a few games.
I'm sure he has. I'm sure he probably has a Maine sweater just like your wife Vicky does in her closet.
Oh, it's my sweater.
Well, it's your sweater, but
I mean, Vicky has the UNH herself because she's from New Hampshire.
Yeah,
but you know, I won't get into what the nicknames for UNH are and all that on this podcast.
We have to have Lauren on here to be able to
defend herself, right?
Yep.
To defend herself, right? That gives us 6 forwards so far. So halfway through on the front end of our lineup. And as Tryder was mentioning there, he's looking for what he struggled with the first couple of years is finding that elite scorer. So finding more guys like Jiwa. I mean, it was crazy. He was saying that his power play in Connecticut when he was with the Nighthawks in the USPHL was at 30%. Like that's a damn good rate.
That's a deadly number.
And he's trying
3 out of every 10 you're scoring.
Trying to replicate that now with the Spartans, of course. We already mentioned Shea Flanagan. I think next we'll go with Scotty Osani, who is at Johnson & Wales now. Just an awesome name.
Scotty Osani.
Right? I remember Derek
Reese, like a UFC fighter.
Derek Reese, who's been their broadcast for the past couple of years. There's a few goal calls. Like, you know how like randomly stuff like just like stays in your mind forever? Mm-hmm. Like there's a couple of goal calls where he's like rattling off Osani's name and it just, I'll never forget it. Like it just sounds awesome.
Sounds right. Yep.
Right. Couple it's awesome goals that he scored during his time. Another one of those guys that actually went to college and realized he had more eligibility at the junior level. And this was a great conversation to have with Brett because he was actually playing club on Long Island in New York in 2018-19.
Oh, look at that.
And I don't know how you recruit a player like this, right? Like, I don't know if Brett was watching video or something, but he was like, come play juniors for me, and then I'll get you off to NCAA hockey.
Yeah, Farmingdale State. I know what that is. That's right by where I went to school, Hofstra. I remember that school.
Like, and he did it. He came, put up 24 points in 43 games, and didn't get to play last year at Johnson & Wales, but he's ready to go. Like Tryder followed through on that promise that he made to him. And I just a unique and interesting but awesome story, right?
Yeah, no, it is. And it just goes to show you, we've talked about that on the show many a times. There's no shortage of good hockey players. And now with the leagues and the junior leagues and colleges growing, and you just said it earlier, there's only 60 Division I college hockey teams. So there's a lot of guys that are in the D2, D3 range that could play. There's just not enough spots. There's not enough slots for those guys to be. And we've mentioned that many a times on here. So, I mean, that's a really cool story about scouting, and you find guys in some of these weird little areas. Farmingdale State College. There you go. There was Osani.
Speaking of Division I had a couple coaches reach out to me this week and text me some Division I transfers that UMass Boston is bringing in this year.
Oh.
And it's like, I may need to text Pete Belisle and say, can you hold those guys out of the lineup when we face you
for the All-Star game
in October? One of them is Corey Clifton, Connor
Clifton's brother.
Yes.
Wow.
Like,
and where is he transferring from?
Quinnipiac.
Oh, the Bobcats.
Corey, Tim, and Connor all went to Quinnipiac.
Right?
Like, and it's just like, I hope he doesn't hit as hard as his brother does, because I'm not in the game, right? The players are in the game, right?
But clicky hockey though.
But I picked the team, right? So I'm putting the players in this situation against UMass Boston. But hey, we'll get
sweet for you as a former Bobcat. You're like, sorry, buddy, I got to wish against you that you're not in the lineup because I don't want our guys to get crushed and mentally and physically. You know,
I want to do another returner next, and he didn't have a lot of points for the Spartans last year. Henry Pendleton had 13 points in 37 games. Mm-hmm. But this goal in the playoffs was the opening goal of their Game 1 series against the Avalanche, which ultimately they went on to win that series. And I remember that snipe specifically because I got to call it, right?
Yes, you did.
It's from Annapolis, Maryland, coming back for another season with the Spartans. To me, I think he fits a good spot here next in the lineup. Mm-hmm. Let's go 20. That gives us 4 forwards left, Jeff.
What about Conrad Smid, Neil? What are your thoughts on Conrad? Another one of those solid names from the Spartans that was there for a short time, but again, a lot of guys on the Spartans team have only been here for a short time because they've only been in the league for 2 years.
It's gonna be unique when we get a chance to add a third roster to teams like this and Worcester. I mean, not teams like the Rangers and those guys that have already eight lineups to pick from, but adding a third roster, what that will do. I mean, Schmid is another player that actually came over from the Maine Eclipse.
Right?
Yeah. I know Brett's still working to find a spot for him as well. Look at the jump that he made. He had 5 points in 7 games for the Eclipse, which is good. But then immediately put up 24 points in 24 games with the Spartans. So
yeah, he was a big playoff guy too.
If he had a chance to play, a full 36, like a lot of guys got to, I say full, a cut down 36, which was the max that he really could get to, what would he have put up? You have to ask yourself from this past season. So
right.
I think he would be a great addition for this. So we got to put
beautiful
2020-21 for Schmid. And that gets us down to just 3 guys left, plus the goalies and utility. Goalie, I think I got a pretty quick idea where we're going to go with that one.
I think it might be one of your old fantasy guys too, possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I had something pulled up here for a second and I just lost it. I had it and then lost it.
He had it. They lost it.
So
let's see. I used to say a couple more names. I see.
I didn't know if Brett wanted me to include this name, but we're going to include it. I know he spent just a single season with the Spartans.
Oh, yeah, he was good.
And that's Jackson Penner. Actually was able to play in the NOJHL last year, which there wasn't much hockey.
Hockey league?
Yeah, there wasn't much hockey in Canada played, but Jackson Penner put up 28 points in 45 games that inaugural campaign for the Spartans. So I think we got to put Jackson Penner on this list. He's
from Saskatoon, Neil. You got to put him on. He's from Saskatoon guy, eh?
Like, honestly, like, I know Brett was talking about not like replicating one guy from one year to the next, but Penner was the 2019-20 version of the 2020-21 Azam Jiwa. They're kind of the same. They both spent a good deal of time in Canada. They both put up similar point totals, and they both could score. Yeah. So I think that gives us another good forward to add to the mix and gets us down to just 2 guys left. And as Jeff did mention, we only have 2 years to pick from.
Choose from.
I think in terms of overall history in the league, I want to go with Jack Morton because he spent the 2018-19 season helping the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Knights reach the Frozen Finals, right? And
deal.
It's not because he's from Norway, Maine. I didn't even know there was.
Oh, didn't notice that.
Look,
you didn't know there was a Norway, Maine. Keep that map open. Where the heck is that? Is that by New Brunswick? Is it in Canada almost?
It's over there.
Where is it? Oh,
it's on the western side of the state. It's closer than Old Town.
Yeah, it is. Look at that.
So we'll put Jack Morton on this list. As I mentioned, spent the 2018-19 season with the Knights. Had 19 points in 40 games. Then moved over to the Spartans for the 19-20 season. Had 24 points in 41 games. And that gets us down to one guy left. So let's pause for a second. Okay. And I think that we can this is unique, but we're going to put Dan Long in that utility spot.
I think, didn't we do this before with someone that was a multi-team player? They were on one. I thought.
But like, to me, what he did for the Spartans before going to Westfield State, and like I said before, like he wasn't supposed to play for the Railers this past year, right? Like, is Dan Long the first player in the history of the 2021 offseason that's been on back-to-back all-time lineups? Yes, he is. But yeah.
Welcome, Dan.
He had 20 points in 27 games for the Spartans in the back end, that 19-20 season. And he just wanted to stay out in is Worcester Western Mass?
Yeah, it's considered Metro West. It is.
So he wanted to stay out there from Connecticut. I don't blame him. And I think he was still taking classes at Westfield too, so that's kind of why he ended up in Worcester. So yeah. I think he just fits in this situation, which gives us 7D. And to finish this lineup, we got to find one more forward and 2D. And
what about Josh Alexander? He was someone I had on my list.
I had him. It was between him and one other guy for that last spot, and a player.
We'll bring them both up and see their EP pages and dissect the two.
Alexander is at Anna Maria College, another guy that actually was with Brett with the Nighthawks in the USPHL, and then came and put up 23 points in 48 games, 2019-20. But I can't even pronounce this kid's first name. Yeheni Lavrov. I remember him specifically because he was excellent for the Spartans during that 2020-21 season. Like every time he had the puck, like it was like some dynamic play was coming. He had tremendous hands. And if he got to spend more time in the EHL, I think he would have made a bigger name for himself. I think I want to go him here.
Okay.
Next.
Commissioner vote upheld.
So Lavrov, Yeheni Lavrov.
Yeheni Lavrov.
I'm pretty sure
that flag. Where is he from?
He's from Sweden/Belarus. Well,
I think there's two flags. He's got the Swedish and the Belarus flag.
He's from Sweden, place of birth, Sweden.
Got it. Look at that youth team. Can you say that one?
No.
Segeltorps.
Moving on to the goalies.
Sounds like a dinosaur. Now let's move on from that. On to the goalies, and I think I know who the first one is that you're gonna.
The first one has to be the goalie that I brought up with Brett late in the interview, and that's Jacob Wetman, who Brett had the chance. I mean, you don't know how many guys called him late because Brett only had two goalies down the stretch, and asked him if he needed one more guy, and he just kept telling me, Wetman's our guy. Tell these guys to stop calling me. He had a .915 save percentage in the regular season. He just won game after game after game, including helping to sweep the Avalanche in that playoff series. Funny how Brett mentioned in the interview how he knew even with the results of the series, the Avalanche were still probably going to get into the Frozen Finals via the at-large. So
at-large.
He did not take credit, though, for preparing them, if you will, for the finals. Maybe that series with Seacoast helped get them ready, right?
Might have woke them up a little bit.
For the other goalie, there are a few that we can choose from here, but I think I want to go with another player who was the number one guy for the Spartans, but had a chance to go to college mid-season, and that's Nevin Tardif. He was the number one guy for the Spartans during that 1920 season, and then went to Worcester State halfway through, similar to Dan Long going to Westfield State. But I think that just shows how for Tryder and Seacoast, losing your number one goalie or losing Dan Long, one of your top defensemen in the middle of the season, yes, that stings, but ultimately they're going with it where you want them to go, right? Ultimately, that's why we're all here, to get these kids off to college. And I think we got to put him here because when he arrived at Worcester State, he was the starting goalie immediately, right? He almost played as many games at Worcester State during the 1920 season as he did with the Seacoast Spartans. He played 14 with the Spartans and 10 with Worcester State. Like, not many players can say that they almost play as many college games as junior games in a single season.
Right.
Like, that's pretty unique.
A nice year's work for Tardif.
So that actually does it for our lineup, Jeff.
Wow. Look at that on the board. Seacoast joining Worcester is another 2-season team that we've dug out a full lineup for. But again, it's a credit to them, right? They both have had a lot of commits, and that's kind of the bittersweet thing too, right? You want to keep some of these guys on your team, but the ultimate goal is this is a pit stop in your hockey career, and I'm supposed to help you move on to colleges, which Brett Tryder has done a great job of getting a lot of commitments here in the last 2 years. So yeah, good job, coach.
You want to read off all these names? Look at these forward names. Ready for this? Shea Flanagan, Azam Jiwa, Clendenin Stewart, Ashton Colazzo, Drew Eade, Jacob Dubé, Scotty Osani, Henry Pendleton, Conrad Schmid, Jackson Penner, Jack Morton, and Yeheni Lavrov.
Jack Morton, you are the winner of our most normal name on the Spartans. There are no Mike Smiths here.
Yes, so now I got
on to the D.
Now the D. Michael O'Brien.
Hey, there we go.
Okay.
But
Bjorn Schupbach, Nick Null, Andrew Clouden, Nick Labrizzi, Louis Valente, and Dan Long.
Hey, Dan Long, number 3.
Goaltending core duo of Jacob Wetman and Nevin Tardif. And that wraps up our Seacoast Spartans all-time lineup. And there's only 2 teams left, Jeff. So
one of them being an original team, I remember we have to do the core.
So to go through and provide those that are listening with the upcoming schedule for podcasts between now and the start of the season, I got this all laid out.
Look at
Next week, on the episode that drops on the 12th, we're going to have Jake Atkins and Andy Walker on. Those are the 2 teammates from UMass Boston that roller skated from Massachusetts to Michigan last year and are having their, what they're calling Men in Blades fundraiser number 2 this year. So we're going to have them on next week. The week after, I'm going to have on the Maine Eclipse, hoping for Eric Michaud, who is the GM and EHLP coach. Obviously, sorry, Jeff, we cannot do an all-time lineup for them. So that's back-to-back weeks off for you.
Okay.
The week after, on the 26th, will be the New York Apple Corps, our final original 6 team of the offseason. And then it's just fitting that for episode number 87, we do the New Jersey 87.
87s. It's like 87. I'm like thinking players. I'm like, who the heck was a famous player that wore 87? Oh, the 87s. Hey.
Yes. 87s in the 87th episode on September 2nd. September 9th, we're going to do an EHLP to EHL all-time lineup. And then September 16th, it sounds like I just went through this really fast. That's our season preview. That's our first set of fantasy picks because we start on the 17th. So got the whole rest of the summer mapped out.
And that's when we'll have a couple more voices, Lawrence Smith and Anthony Apollo joining us this year for the podcast. We'll just have to get bored with just hearing me and Neil's voice.
Yeah, so for those that want to keep listening, the next schedule I'll go through is my golf schedule for the next month. Just kidding. Next week we'll have the
Atkinson. Oh, let's switch it up a little bit.
My wife has turned off the podcast. And that does it for this week's episode of the East Show. That's the Seacoast Spartans lineup. Thanks again to Brett Tryder for coming on the podcast this week. as I mentioned, next week, Jake Atkins and Andy Walker coming on. We'll talk to you later on, Jeff.
Sounds good, Neil. See you then, buddy.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.